Oh, blessed love, give thanks, family, once again. What a joy, happiness, Hotep. I give thanks for your presence with us on a wonderful sit down here in the Tiger's Nest. Of course, you know the Honorable Priest Isaac here with you. And this evening we are just giving joy, real joy. I'm sure you've heard of joy, joy relief, joy,
Ari.
joy, happy, which
Joy Ari,
we're
yes.
not dealing with the Jew and the Elri. We have the master in the house, family. I know from time to time you would have heard me mention our great elder, brother Baaba Heru, and of course what he definitely means to myself and even my growth. So I have been blessed this evening to have the ancient with us. In Rastafari, we refer to our elders as the ancients. And of course, this is no exception whatsoever as it relates to the individual that is now blessing us with his presence this evening. Family, I have with me the Right Honorable Baba Heru Ankh Ra Samaj Sepata. And he was born in Romana and grew up in the British colony of Tortola, British Virgin Islands, where I had the pleasure of meeting him first. Just to give you a quick rundown on the Honorable King. In 1958, he migrated to the United States of America, and he attended Wingate High School in Brooklyn, then worked as a supervisor in data processing for 4 years. He became a New York City police officer from 1964 to 1985. During his patrols as an officer, he cultivated respectful relationships with the people of the community he served. He takes pride in never having fired his weapon. I will repeat. He takes pride in never having fired his weapon in the line of duty or off duty in the 20 years that he served. My family always preferring entrepreneurship. In 1967, he established the Sphinx shop in Brooklyn, New York, teaming up with fine artist Jaculo Cooper. There he manufactured dashikis and collectibles, African artifacts. In 1969, he became a vegetarian and soon after founded a cultural group known as the Jewels of Aton, focusing on the old kingdom legacy of Antra, if that's the right pronunciation, which re-emerged during the 18th dynasty led by Tuhutimus IV, Amenhotep III, Queen Tai, Akhenaten, and Nefertiti. And just to seal up, in 1971, he met Master Joel Juan Anacelto, if the pronunciation is correct, Santiago de Colon, who became his mentor in the art of jewelry making in copper, brass, silver, gold, and platinum. He officially became a craftsman or a craftsman of Pata. He then founded and became the chief designer of the studio of Pata, known for authentic Kemetic protective amulets, for which he coined the term Joy Ari. Yes, family, we have the father of the Ankh in the house. And if I'm not mistaken, he is the first official Kemetic priest in the state of New York. And if I need to be corrected, I'm not ashamed at all. I would like to say, Hotep, blessed love, and great joy to our visitor, not a guest, because he's not guessing anything tonight, Brother Baba Heru Samaj. My Lord.
Thanks and praise. My brother Chief Isaac, Priest Isaac, you've got lyrics.
That's all.
Yes, indeed.
Mm.
It's been quite a few years since we met in Tortola
Yes, my brother.
at
Mellow
Mellow
Mood.
Moods. Yes, indeed, right?
Mhm.
So it was an honor to meet you there. And well, it took a while for us to finally have a sit down together.
Mhm.
And I think it's a very auspicious time because, as you know, we have been, as a people, studying and listening to elders who have been telling us about things that we have been educated into forgetting. And now, because of the time that we are in, this time that is ruled over by the command to know, since we have passed through the Piscean age of belief, we are now being asked to get deeper into knowledge, because the scriptures would say that my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. We are surely bent over, backward and sideways with belief. But to pursue knowledge is to walk outside of a closed room of belief and to explore the hidden realms of knowledge, the knowledge of the hidden, the knowledge of Amen, that hidden principle which has been given a new definition in modern times, meaning so be it. But I beg to differ. We reclaim um, the ancient meaning of the term Amen, which refers to the hidden realm of spirit. For spirit calls us to investigate, not just to accept belief, but to investigate so that we truly would know. And we are supported by the age in which our stars have moved into, the age of we call it Hapi, known modernly as Aquarius in modern times. So this is the age where so much of what elders have been digging up, and not only our elders of African descent, but many elders from the northern region of this earth who have been very honest. People like Gerald Massey and Count Volney, Ruins of Empires, people like Albert Churchward, Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, and even Wallace Budge, who refused to at first accept the fact that Nile Valley Africans were the masters of that ancient Queen Kingdom known as Smai-Tawi. So there is a great awakening going on, and I'm glad to have been inspired by my father's teaching to enter into that realm and to become a teacher of the ancient culture of the happy, now called Nile Valley.
Thank you, brother. And
so with that, continue.
Of course, we must show appreciation. As Rastafari, we like to say appreciate love. We don't really appreciate hate, but appreciate love. Your zeal over the years and all that you would have done for us. And believe me, those of us who are also standing on your shoulders too, and hope that we could lift you up as well. We definitely are those who are the benefactors of your teachings, and we are being rewarded, rewarded by the ancestors by just having you in our presence, teaching us, continuing what you have started decades ago. And, in reality, we can speak of other elders who are not here. So we have to really show respect for those who are still with us and definitely continuing to, teach us the knowledge that you have been blessed with. My brother, this evening, you wanted us to go into the specific subject, Smai-Tawi. Now, when we met in Tortola, you mentioned Smai-Tawi to me. I think that was the very first time I would have ever come across Smai-Tawi. In fact, at the time when we met at Mellow Moods, you even instructed me on how I should pronounce Smai-Tawi, if I'm not mistaken. It was no regular Smai-Tawi. You explain how the tongue. I don't really have it yet, but I know it's Smai.
Tawi. It's
Right.
about it's snapping the tongue against the hard palate.
Of the roof of the mouth.
Precisely.
Very
Because
good.
that agitates the pineal gland, which, as you know, is the master gland that can help us to access fields of meditation, which nowadays modern scientists are referring to as the quantum fields. We call them the Seket Neteru or the Seket Hetepu, the fields of offerings, where we enter into a meditation in order to connect with the indwelling forces that dwell within and without, that from cosmos to inner space, these fields of contact with divine forces invites us to delve into a deeper understanding of our purpose. So now to speak of Smai Tarwi. Smai Tarwi, as you know, is really the name of the Nile nation. Today, people would speak of the geographical regions that encompass this place. We speak of Cush, which, of course, you know, in your Bible is the proper name. As a matter of fact, on the temple walls, it's called Kesh. And then we have Kenset, which we call Nubia or Sudan today, and Kemet. So Cush, Kenset, and Kemet, that this ancient nation was united as one effort by the ancient queens and kings of this Nile Valley region. The waters that fed this region, called the Nile today, were known as the Iteru Hapi. Hapi means the two rivers, and it applies to the one that comes out of the land of Cush in Lake Tana, and of course the other one coming out of Nyanza, Victoria, in the equatorial regions of Africa. That together, this comprised Smai Karwi. Now, what do we mean by Smai Karwi, the united two regions? Why did we have to constantly make the effort to stay united? A very simple, basic reason I'll give you had to do with the fact, and we're speaking of the geographical aspect of Smai Karwi now, because Smai Karwi has many other applications, but let's deal with the geographical regions. The land now called Kemet, which so many of us have been tapping into, so much so that we forget that Kemet was just the northeastern section of Smai Tarwi, the united two regions. Why did we always impress the effort of unity upon us? For a very simple reason. To the south, the sisters and brothers there were in the main cattle herders and sheep herders. To the north was the farmers and the gardeners. Now, if you know anything about the farm life, you would know that if you set your cattle and your sheep loose in my garden, you threaten my life because they are going to eat my food. They're going to eat the very basis of my economic viability when they consume my green food. So we had to find a way to share that river and to stop clashing with each other's lifestyle. It was not an easy thing to do because, as you know, cattle are very free. They are only held back by the fences that we put up to prevent them from wandering afield into our gardens. So the effort to maintain that unity was a constant thing. However, the ancient ancestors took Smai Karwi far beyond the concept of a geographical application in order to say that within us, there are two forces at work, our left brain hemisphere and the right brain hemisphere. The right brain is usually referred to as the feminine side, the feminine brain. And the left brain is the masculine brain. The right brain is lunar, and the left brain is solar. Now, the right brain functions on the right side, the
right,
left. Left. The right the right brain functions on the left side of the body, and the left brain on the right. Now, as you know, modern man refers to the left hand as the sinister side. That's a very cute put down of the internal feminine intuitive powers that all humans have. We have been forced to totally be right-handed in order to just give the impulse and to inspire the impulse of the intellect. So we now pursue, in the main here in the West specifically, the developing the left side of the brain, the intellectual side, whereby we have put the intuitive side of the right brain to sleep. That's another put down of the internal mother. It's a put down of the lunar principle, which reflects the light of the solar principle. And as a matter of fact, which gives birth to the sun itself in its name of Nut, the divine feminine heavens, which our ancestors always saw the heavens as the divine womb of all creation, as well as the topsoil on the earth is her domain likewise, because the solar energy that moves within her celestial womb has an impact upon what grows in the topsoil of the earth. But underneath that topsoil is the male aspect called Geb. So you see in Smykawi concept or cosmogony, we see that there is this marriage between heaven and earth, between Nut and Geb. These are what we call the cosmic principles of creation. Now, Geb and Nut, according to our ancestors, gives birth to the earth principles known as Ast, Asar, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar, two pairs of divine principles, or what they call, unfortunately, gods and goddesses, but we don't like to use those terms because they're both pejorative. First of all, we do not have any record of African people calling the divine by a German name, Gott or God. And therefore, we are charged to find ancient African sounds by which we can invoke names of divinity. And so one of the things that in Smykawi means uniting ourselves to our ancient memory. Here we are in so-called modern times, reaching back in time and space to reclaim sounds used by our ancestors. And even though some would say, well, the Medu Neter, the so-called hieroglyphic language, was never interpreted, we beg to differ, because we have the power of recall. All we have to do is enter into the field of Tehuti, the neter of the word itself. Because in our legacy, all the things that we use are governed by divine principles. And since we use speech, mathematics, music, that is given authorship from the realm known as Tehuti. The modern Egyptologists refer to Tehuti as thought, from which we get the very concept of thought, because out of thought comes the sounds of language. We see nature in all its beautiful array, and we give this the parameter, this beautiful display of nature names. The animals, the birds, the insects, the reptiles, we give them names, and those names are given to us through the influence of the principle known as the word Tehuti. Okay? And so now we are called upon to renovate this ancient concept of Smite, are we? Because look what has happened to us as a people since many of us came over here in the West, and our ancient ancestors referred to the West as Amenta, the hidden land. Why the hidden land? Because from where we were positioned on the eastern part of this continent, in the land now called Africa, we prefer to call it Afrika, 3 syllables, which means the flesh and the soul of the hidden sun. When we saw that the earth turned that caused what we refer to as sunset and sunrise, we see that the West was called Amenta, the hidden land, the place where the sun seemed to go to hide, but is also the place where resurrection takes place, because Asar, or the one they know as they call Osiris, was seen as the first lord of resurrection, because the ancestors had a practice in the Nile Valley that if you passed out of this life on the eastern bank, your body would be rowed to the west to follow the fall of the sun. If you died in Amenta on the western shore, your body would be brought back to the east and then would be rowed back to the west to establish the concept of your going to the zone of Asar, who is known as Neb Amenta, or Lord of the West. And being the principle of resurrection, the principle of the Lord of cycles, it means that you too would have the opportunity to resurrect, which is exactly what is happening to us now. Many of us are resurrecting to reclaim our ancient way of being, seeing, and living. We are throwing off the yoke of those who have imposed upon us, those who put chains on our wrists and our feet, and who, through much agitation, finally took them off. The chains, the physical chains, I must say, on our hands and our feet. However, the chains that have been imposed on our minds through their concept of belief, which they transmitted through a rapacious slave-dealing culture, did not sit too well with the firstborn, with those who carry the genes of the firstborn of the continent of Africa. So it placed upon us the responsibility now to renovate this ancient way of thinking and being, and to reconnect our present Western conditioning to the ancient Eastern inheritance of our ancestors, and now to voluntarily remove the chains from our minds, for no one can do it for us but us. We must make the effort, and it takes a while, because we've been so brain-stained that washing these stains from our brain, washing the soil and the dirt that had been imposed upon us by rapacious slave mongers of the East and the West, because let's not give the East a pass for their slave trade, which they still continue to this day in the name of their deity, raping our women in Darfur and Sudan, kidnapping our young girls in Nigeria and Ghana and all those countries of those Berlin Conference made countries in Africa. That now we are now reclaiming this ancient way of thinking and being, and reconnecting with our own cosmology, reconnecting with our own story of creation. You didn't know that we had a story of creation, did you? You thought that what you read about in King James Version was the only and authentic story of creation. But when you do that, you're throwing away your ancestors' legacy that they left you, and they carved it deep in stone because they knew that we were going to come into forgetfulness. And so, because of the works of so many of our past elders, you know their names, you see them on YouTube, you can have contact with them. We have been reconnecting. But some of us have gone beyond just reading about it and feeling good about it to becoming it. Because the thing that has eluded us, the thing that has caused so much division among the various tribes that have come over here in Amenta, where you have people from Africans in the Americas now combating Africans from the West Indies. We have Africans from the West Indies claiming, well, I talk better than you. And the ones in the States, well, we have this Yankee talk. You know, we have these simplistic divisions, ways in which we avoid each other. Even Africans who come from the continent are told, do not associate with the blacks in America. That's what they are told. Many have told me they were told that by certain officials who stamp their passport and so on. So you see the division. And of course, we have the voluntary divisions now of the different religions that we've embraced. So how difficult it's going to be for us to now make steps towards uniting together. Blackness is not enough. The different shades of the melanin that we carry is not enough to unite us. There's something that is magical that we can all claim because we are missing this divine principle. This principle that made Smaitawi last for thousands of years. It was a principle called Ma'at. Some say Ma'at. M-A'-A-T. Ma'at is righteousness, balance, order, truth, reciprocity, sobriety, propriety, harmony, and honesty. That is what we are called upon to live. This is what caused our ancestors to always seek that principle of unity, because it goes beyond all the divisive methods that human beings have found to create themselves into different tribes at war with each other over different philosophies and religions and politics. Ma'at calls us to a high ethical and moral standard. If you read in your Bible in the book of Acts, I think 7, chapter 22nd verse, that lawgiver who you all know about because that's what your master gave you in the book known as the King James Version, he showed you in the Torah that one, the great lawgiver name of Moses, his name is really Meses, which means to be born, that he had 10 commandments that he gave to the people that he led out of the land of the northeastern section of Smaitawi, known as Egypt today, which we call Kemet. Where do you think that he was able to develop knowledge of a moral system? He was brought up in the house, the northeastern house of Smaitawi in the land of Kemet, now called Egypt. So you see, the very moral structure that our Christian brothers and sisters depend upon, the very structure that our beloved Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters depend upon, was taught to this great prophet by the Africans of the Nile, who fished him out of the river, the Iteru Hapi, known as the Nile today, and who brought him up in the house of the rulers of that land, and who educated him in their divine wisdom. Now, as you know now today, there are many who are denying the existence of these major prophets that we read about in the Torah, in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Many people have the effrontery to say, no, they never existed. Well, I would not be so harsh, because I would say this. since the divine is in each and every one of us, if you have 2 million Christians in this world, 2 billion Christians out of 8 billion people on this planet, you have 1/4 of them saying that there's such a person known as Jesus, even though his name would have been Yeshua, not Jesus. Jesus is a Roman name, or Jesus, okay? And he was not Roman, okay? So why Western man always change and rename things so he can own it? But you cannot own this. This does not belong to you. You adopted it, and it helped you because you used to war with each other all the time, and now you're warring again with each other, are you not? However, the fact is that this system of Ma'at is what we seek to reclaim in reestablishing unity among our different tribes now. Smaitawi. Union of, whenever you come across someone who may be your opposer, seek to find a way to seek that unity, to end the quarrel, because that's the charge that our Divine Mother and her sister, Astenabet, gave to the warring brothers, gave to Heru and Set. Now, I am going on, and I'm touching in a lot of bases, and you are saying, what is this brother talking about? We never heard of this kind of stuff. Some of you have never heard, but those of you who have been on YouTube, listening to people like Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark, Ivan von Suderman, and so many others, Francis Cress Welsing, who wrote the ISIS papers, and others, you may have a hint of what I'm talking about. But we have gone beyond just reading and feeling good about what we're reading about our ancient story to seeking ways to apply it and put it into our lives now. Yes. Because never has this earth in our lifetime been so arrayed with lies masquerading as truth. So now is the good time for the resurrection of Ma'at. And while we may seek union with the presumptuous one who thinks that he is the God of the earth, and indeed he may very well be, because he invented his very name. That's not a name that we ever used to invoke divinity. Okay, we were not Gothic, we were not German, and we have nothing against the Gothic people or the German people, even though they may have issues with us because the sun has blessed us with a solar robe that has been referred to as black skin. This carbon, this melanin, is something very special, for which we have been more envied than hated. Because when you are kissed by the orb, that star, that day star, it marks you as someone very special. And because you have been marked as someone very special, you've been envied and hated by those who have missed that kiss of the rays of Ra. But we do not say this and try to put down any other human being on this earth, because we all charge to become truly human. But to be truly human, you've got to be humane. You have to embrace compassion for your fellow human beings. Compassion even for the animals. Compassion for all living things, for the environment, and seek to find ways to improve the condition of our environment. Because now we're being visited by storms and gales and hurricanes, because the attitudes that we have of battling with each other, those negative attitudes gathers into the Akashic regions above our very heads and comes back to haunt us as tornadoes and hurricanes and storms. And you say, where did this wind come from? Well, you created these winds, my brothers and sisters, based upon your foul attitudes that too many of us have embraced in our war against each other because of our tribal differences. Instead of seeing these differences as facets in a very fine human jewel, we see it as a reason to go to war with each other. So we are challenged now. Go and renovate and dust off what our ancestors left inscribed in the stone. Haunt the libraries and read what they wrote on enduring papyrus. And maybe, just maybe, if we stay long enough, we'll discover how to read these ancient words. And many of them have been read. And now we have a print of how to come back into ways of thinking and being that may heal us of this madness that we are now enduring on this planet Earth. Smart are we unity of opposing, what seem to be opposing forces, but are really complementary forces. This is what we seek. And this is what we must work to re-establish, my beloved brothers and sisters. Smite are we, undergirded by the foundation of Ma'at, righteousness, balance, order, truth, reciprocity, sobriety, propriety, and harmony, honesty.
Yes, my good brother. And for the royal family, again, we have the ancient Baaba Heru with us, Samaj. And we are, if you're just coming in, just joining us. And if you're just coming in, you know what to do, kind of press that thumbs up, like button, just so that more people can, you know, gravitate to the great information that we are receiving this evening. My brother, I want to take the conversation. I want to look at Smite Tawi on two levels. I would like to, if possible, that you can give us a little historical perspective on it, first of all, and then I would like to look at, as you say, how we are really applying it today, especially amongst those of us who are, let's just say, of the conscious fraternity. You know, we are coming out of one, but we tend to have different ideas. And sometimes, if we don't have a sane way of looking at consciousness, we separate ourselves unnecessarily from each other, when sometimes the things that we quote unquote believe, as they say, we're coming out of that age, is coming from the same root. But before we go to that aspect, is it possible you could give us a little historical perspective on Smite Tawi? Because with those of us who are scholars and historians, you know, we would hear of the account, for example, of 3000 BCE, when Nama would have united the two lands or the two regions. But then, if I'm not mistaken, that would be the upper and lower, specifically Kemet. But you would clarify all of that for me. So historically, when we speak of this unity of the two regions, which is, as you said earlier, from all the way in Kush to Kemet as we know it today, when was this historically pronounced? If you could just give us a little rundown, and then we could go to another perspective.
Well, we can go to the palette of Nermer. Sakara, can I have that palette of Nermer? If you study ancient, any school that you may go to, they will always introduce this ancient palette that is a carved representation of the founding of the two regions. Here is the king of the old kingdom by the name of Nermer. If you can see,
yes, positive.
Look at the crown he's wearing. That's known as the Heru, the white crown of the south, because he came from the southern region of Kush and Kenset. And as you can see, he has come to this region from the region of the south, wearing the crown of the south. And when you turn on the other side of the palette, He has arrived at the north, wearing the crown, the red crown of the north, to unite the two regions. Now, Nermer, he practiced a form of meditation. And how do I know this? Because intuition helps you to read what you're looking at.
Of course, right, great.
You see him here. These are captives.
We see it good.
Okay. He arrives at these blossoms here at the north, and he is holding this captive by a lock of his hair. Right?
Yes, my brother.
And what is he doing? And above here
It's Heru.
is Heru. It means that he is projecting his victory before it even took place, because Heru is at the very top of his consciousness. He have embraced the spirit of Heru in order to conquer the foe that you see him holding by the lock of hair at the bottom. A modern boxer did the same thing. His name was Muhammad Ali. He could name the round in which his opponent would fall. And the opponent most of the times obliged him by falling when he predicted he would fall. This was called winning before you fight. In other words, you have to project your victory as he projected his victory by embracing the principle of Heru that you see on top these plants of the north here.
Yes.
Okay. And because he meditated on the field of victory as Heru Kuhuti, that means the warrior spirit of Heru, he was able to conquer the foe. Now, this is the region of the south. Now he arrives at the north, and he puts on a different crown. And if you would see, on this side of the palette, there are figures laid out with hands tied behind their backs, and their heads are between their legs. In other words, their heads have been lopped off, which is another way of what I've learned to do is to interpret these pieces of art as prophetic, as prophecy, because this is what happened to a people who came to the north from the south, or who was brought by northerners, who were literally castrated of their manhood and subjugated. This palette tells what would happen to such a people. At least that's the way in my meditation in the fields of the Neteru. This insight was given to me. Now, you don't have to accept what I'm saying as fact. It is the insight that I was given through meditation, that our ancestors left us guides by which we can renovate our consciousness that has been imposed upon by foreigners who have imposed their belief patterns on us, and which we have volunteered to maintain and sustain. When Kanye West said that chattel slavery was a choice, I beg to differ with him. Chattel slavery was never a choice, but our continued paying attention to those thought forms that have been imposed upon us by foreigners, that's voluntarily, we have volunteered to remain slaves to their imposed thought patterns. And we continue to deny the entry and the reclamation of our ancestral way of thinking and being. And that is what so many of our elders have been trying to get us to do. And it's a very daunting task, because when someone is addicted, it's not easy to give up our addictions, is it? You tell a drunk liquor is bad for you, and he say, yes, you're right. My liver is hurting right now. But the minute he gets out of your sight, he's going to go and get himself a flask bottle and put it in his back pocket. You tell the same thing to someone who is hooked on heroin or on crack. And the minute they get out of your sight, they're going to go and light up and or inject that poison into their system because what? They are in, yes, they have been infected with addiction. And so to get rid of this infection, we have to reclaim, and we have primary evidence of a way of thinking and being that we can go back and through meditation, through discussions, and reasoning among ourselves, we can narrow those areas of disunity that keeps us divided. And I need to say that the color of our skin is not enough to unite us. Because look at us today. Throughout the islands, how the gangs are at war with each other. You get on a boat, you get on an airplane, you come down to be able to enjoy the house that you've stayed in New York City, working day and night, riding the subways. And who's waiting for you? Some of your own sisters and brothers who are jealous of the fact that you were able to build a house on the land that you inherited from your grandmother and grandfather. If you are lucky enough to get it, because you know, when it comes to land, oh boy, we island folks know how to go to war over land, okay? So what are we going to do when we come on vacation from working so hard and riding the subway back and forth to New York City and buy our house and build our house? We invite jealousy. We come back home, and because we come from New York, oh, they think we got money, so you may find yourself robbed. If you go to certain islands, you may be kidnapped and held for ransom. As you know, in the newspapers and the radio, you've heard what is happening on some of these islands, okay? And it's happening all over because strangers are coming and bringing their guns, and because we have been indoctrinated through the music. What we call music, no, it's really, a lot of it is garbage, but we have been infected with this garbage, and we are killing each other because we are giving praise to this weapon called a gun. Notice that the same people who brought us this G word to worship also brought us a G word to kill with. You have your God and your gun.
3 letters.
And unfortunately, we are worshiping both and causing havoc throughout our island paradise and in the cities where we live. And we wonder, well, look how these neighborhoods have been gentrified. Well, maybe as tough as it may seem, as dishonest as it may have seemed, how the banks colluded with certain people from out west to chase Africans out of neighborhoods that they inhabited here in New York City, for instance. Send them back down south to where there are gales and storms and hurricanes now tearing up the South. And at least we're no longer standing on the corner killing each other with guns given to us by those who would be our masters again, would it? You see? So again, this challenge to find ways to each other, to see that we are being victimized by our own hands, by our own negative thought forms, propelled by music coming over the radio and on many platforms. They call it gangster music. They call it gangster rap. Look at how these brothers are shooting each other and killing each other on the street corners, while this radio is pounding a beat so high and so big that you can hear your heart thumping in your chest from the volume of the so-called music that is coming through the airwaves. We have work to do to reclaim Smite are we. to reclaim a unity that we have lost. So that's our challenge, my beloved brothers and sisters. And it's not easy because you have to do some reading and some studying and some meditating on what you are reading to find ways to bring about a shift in our consciousness so that as we hold a vision of unity, as we hold a vision of Smai Tawi, I'm saying the way you would say it, Smai Tawi. I don't want to labor you too hard by helping you to learn how it's pronounced.
Trying hard.
Smai Tawi, Smai Tawi. You see how I snap my tongue against my hard palate? So when I go into meditation, my pineal gland has been agitated, and now I can go and let it rest, so I can encounter the very firmament above my head.
Yes, yes.
Where I can go into meditation on my star journeys. Something I'm sure that you, as Priest Isaac, you know about star journeys, I'm sure.
Give thanks for that. Yes. So with the even back to the palette now, just give me a little clarity with the crowns. So the what we call the Nesud Bete, is that the unity of both lands?
Yes, sir. That's precisely Nesut Biti.
Yes.
Who's the ruler of the two regions.
Yes.
His own inner two regions and the geographical two regions over which he ruled.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed Hathor as well too, on the palette. Even Heru.
Oh, yes. Well, that's the earliest form of Heru, known as Ba'at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She's the divine mother principle, because don't forget, this legacy never excluded the feminine principle. So the birth giver of Ba'at, now known as Heru, you see the face, the human face with the horns of a cow. Why these horns? Because the cow is known to be the very protective of its young. And as Heru, or as your throne as the king is the lap of your mother, because that's where she sits you on her lap to give you the nourishment from her breast. So she have made her lap your throne, king. So that's all the more reason why our women are deserving of the highest regard and respect, because even though they're telling us that we must no longer suck on her breasts, that we must feed her, we must feed the chemicals that they've made in their labs to our babies, not knowing what they have put in those so-called formulas. We know about those formulas. It is formulas of all kinds, of religious, of political, of many platforms, that has got us in the fix we're in. So therefore, the time has come for us to take a pause and to go deep within. And the problem with too many of us is we don't want to read anymore. It's better to turn on social media and go to sleep watching these crazy movies and that we are offered to distract us. But now we need to do some work, and we must do the work necessary to reclaim this ancient legacy and make it new again. All it needs is some brushing off, and all we need to do also is to cleanse this divine temple, because the diet that we are consuming, you ate and you died. Die ate. You die because of what you ate and what you are eating. You're getting high blood pressure. In the islands, we're not eating enough green. Too much provision, too much starch, which turns into sugar. The saving grace that we have in the islands where some of our elders live past 100 years is because of the purity of the air above our heads. It's not as polluted as it would be in certain of these larger cities throughout the world. And you in Jamaica, you're in Trinidad, you're in Grenada, you're in Montserrat, Dominica, you're dealing with clean air above your head in the main. and also waters that are relatively clean, even though they're being polluted by all these tourist ships, which are bringing tourists, unfortunately, too often to abuse our young girls and boys, if you know what I'm saying. Recently, somebody was saying to nations in Africa, if you don't change your ways and allow certain agendas to come into your land, we will have to take away some of the aid that we've been giving you. You're being blackmailed. I should say you're being pink-mailed. Okay, shifting your way of your moral standards to make way for predators and child molesters.
Yes, yes. I know we know exactly where you're going, and you must admit that many times, even those that are condemned, they are victims too. This is an agenda.
Yes, and that's something that we must bring the principles of compassion, because much of the confusion that so many of our beloved brothers and sisters suffer from sexually was introduced to them through molestation, not only in their own homes, but in church. Churches throughout Europe have been closing because of the confessions of so many grown-ups as to what has happened to them when they went to Sunday school, when they went to Mass, how many of them were raped amid the pews. So they grow up now confused. And I was on a platform the other day with 19 Keys talking about this exact same thing, how this confusion is proliferating, that now we're getting accustomed to the idea, oh, this is the way it must be. Well, there's something else happening cosmically.
And he's a she now, and you have not to say about that.
Well, let's put it this way. There's confusion brought about by molestation of young children before their adolescent period, before the age of 13, because the Jesuits of the Roman Church said, give me your child and I will show you the man. And so they have taken a certain scripture that appears in 4 books of the New Testament, suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. No, you have made it a kingdom of hell for some of young children, and cause them confusion, and they grow up. And as they grow up and enter into these same practices because of how they have been turned around, now you persecute these people that you have victimized, and you want to kill them now because you don't like that they may be after your own children because of how they were conditioned by you and the churches and Sunday schools that you sent them to. This is a terrible situation that we are facing.
Could I ask a question, especially on I would say, a mystical level, as it deals with ancient Kemet and how our Medu Neter, or nature, as some would say, was expressed. And what I'm going to bring up here, I may be giving some ammunition to, how should I put it, to continue their, I would use the term filthy lifestyle. Honestly, what I'll be doing, some may take it as such, because I know you know even more than me. Because our anciency of ancient Kemet has a lot of symbolism in it, a lot of things you have to read between the line. The esoteric message is strong. You just mentioned earlier church word, signs of primordial man. Anyone who has been through that kind of material understands the depths of symbolism. Now, many ones misunderstand ancient Kemet. We're speaking of the subject area that you are on. You mentioned Happy earlier. Now, Happy, as we know, the god Happy, as you said, you would see 2 Happies representing both Niles. And Happy is seen as a man, but Happy has breasts. At the same time, you have an individual like Akhenaten, of which I have a picture I would think I would put up. Now might be a good time to bring that to the forefront, where you see Akhenaten being portrayed as of course he is a man, but some say he's seen with feminine, formations. And of course, that would bring me to what you were saying earlier about that natural balance that is seen, within male and female. So the anciency, I'm just checking out the anciency of Africa, where you would see the balance. You speak about the age we are coming into, the Aquarius age. And even in anciency, the Aquarius character is also just like happy. In fact, Aquarius is happy in ancient astronomy, is seen as male and female. So I was just bringing that as as not just a philosophy or a theology, but an ancient concept that people would misuse even in this modern day and time for their own, I've seen it happen. And I know you know what I'm talking about. People look at the ancient hieroglyphs and they would say, oh, homosexuality is taking place here, there, and all of this stuff like that. we know better. This is a picture. These pictures, my good brother, was taken by Honorable Empress Naya in her visit to Kemet in 2017. So these are not Google pictures. These are not nobody's website. These are literally from our cameras here. That is
right.
the great Akhenaten, who has been accused of being all sorts of things. I was reading a thing the other day. They're trying to tell me Malcolm X was, I don't even know how to repeat it. Some of these things I don't like to even say it out of my mouth, but you know what I'm talking of. The same thing they accuse Akhenaten of. I'm surprised to hear they're trying to put that over on brother Shabazz there. What was the other name? Olowami?
Mwale.
Yes, it's not coming. You're right. Brother Malcolm X, as we know him, Malcolm Shabazz. So how do you see a line between the ancient science, which could be seriously misread if we are not literate, as people are misreading it today, or maybe just purposely utilizing it for their own, as I said, filthy liquor? What do you think about that?
Okay, let's go to the 18th dynasty king known as Akhenaten by the Egyptologists. I prefer to call him by his true name, Aten-re-Aken.
I did hear you say that.
Which means the living spirit of the sun.
Aten-re-Aken.
Yes. And his wife was known as Aten-re-Neferu Neferiti, now called Nefertiti. I just pronounced her entire name. That he had 6 daughters by her, and some say 1 son, and some are saying that King Tut, Aten-re-Tutank, now called King Tut, now called Amen, also changed his name to Amentutank, who they call Tutankhamen. The Egyptologists turn the vibration of the names of these ancients around, because they know that to utter the way, to make an effort to utter the way the names were pronounced may cause the awakening of the spirit of these individuals, and they want that not to happen, because then they would be losers in this war of differences. Now, Aten-re-Aken, when they found the city that he built from scratch, when he moved away from the priesthood of Amen in order to rear the old kingdom concept of the sun on earth, he built a whole new city. And in this city, he built a harem that was filled with the most beautiful women in his queen kingdom. Okay? And then having 6 daughters, being married to one of the most heralded beautiful women, Aten-re-Neferu Neferiti, that there is no way that he would be in violation of one of the most important of our Ma'atian guides, moral and ethical guides. Not have I polluted myself.
Yes, man.
it says. Now, pollution from the human body, if you are blessed to have the kind of diet that will help you to get rid of your pollution every morning, you will flush it away. So now to go against the Ma'atian confession, not have I polluted myself, or not have I polluted the earth, you would tend to avoid, especially as a king who must set the example, you would tend to avoid the behaviors of what modern people are now accusing you of. Okay? Because you have statues made of yourself in order to convey principles. The two Niles, the twin river, the two rivers Hapi, are shown, as you correctly said, to have pendulous breasts on a male body with a pregnant belly. What does this mean? What is this man doing with breasts? And why is his belly so big? Because everywhere you look on the temple walls, you'll see the people are very slim. They have no pot bellies on the temple walls among the populace. Why is this king displaying this pot belly? To get the answer to that, you would have to go into meditation of spirit, and you would come to realize that this is giving you an idea of not just a personality, but the duty of the rulers of this land to bring abundance of food, because the breast is the first source of your growth and development as a child. You are fed at your mother's breast. So if the king is shown with pendulous breast because he represents the river, which is the very breast from the twin lakes. A woman has two breasts. The Nile River is fed by two lakes, one in equatorial Africa and the other one a little north in the land of Kush, Lake Tana and Nyanza. Okay? In the waters is the soil, because the river is androgynous in itself. It is liquid, but in the liquid is the soil that forms the breadbasket of the then known world in the delta, where the gardens and the farmers were gathering the black silt that came in the 75% of the waters that came every year in the inundation from the land of Kush or Cash, now called Ethiopia in Greek and Abyssinia in Rome. Okay, so you're looking at something that represents the androgyny of nature. Now, when you see the king in the embrace of Ptah, oh, here's the king, and here's him with a statue of a man.
Yes.
What does this mean? Oh, is he in having an affair with Ptah? Well, no. The king is embracing a principle of creativity that resides within himself. And so just because he's pictured as embracing this statue, oh, they accuse him of being what they refer to in modern times as gay. But let me just say this. In saying these things, while most of us question this behavior, but we also have the compassion to realize, as we said in the beginning of this conversation, that a lot of the sexual confusion took place in the plantations of the islands, in the plantations of the South, when the dregs that were sent out of the jails of England and Ireland and all those places became overseers on the plantations of the West. And precisely. And so people developed habits that were contradictory to the ancestral way of being, because from the first times in the African cosmology, you had hares that were born, you had out of the primordial waters of Nun came Ho and Hohet. Ho, masculine, Hohet, feminine. The T at the end of the name indicates the presence of the feminine principle. You had Cook and Coquette. You had Amen and Amenette. You had Nun and Nunette. Pairs, 4 pairs, 4 feminine and 4 masculine. That was the template established by our ancestors in the first times. When that cosmology was copied, when that mythological cosmology was copied by our beloved brother Shem, Nun, the waters, became the abode of Nu, who was given the name Noah. And remember the 4 pairs? There were 4 females and 4 males. Who entered into the ark? Noah and his 3 sons and their wives. And they are now on the waters of the flood. Well, thousands of years before that was written as a history, the concept of Nu coming out of the primordial waters of Nun and calling forth the 4 pairs of Neteru, of the creative principle. Here you have 8 inside of a boat floating on the waters, but in the original story, you had the waters existing, and then you had the captain of the waters whose name was Nu, and then you have Noah and his 3 sons and their wives. So there are 8 in the Kemetic cosmology and 8 in the biblical history. So now you will know how things are transmitted from one culture to the next. The culture of the farmers and gardeners will portray their cosmology as having to deal with what? Soil and water, okay? But you're talking about living soil and living waters, all right? Whereby on the Norse story, the waters were alive, but only to the fish, because in the waters of the flood, that water was very salt. You couldn't grow anything from that water, could you? So you see, there's a difference in how these stories are transmitted. And so to find the cosmology that I spoke about that existed long before the story of Noah and his sons, you would have to go to the 25th dynasty King Shabaka and read a story of Kemetic cosmology of Smai-Tawi cosmology, I should say, that was written in stone. It's now called the Shabaka stone, where the story of creation that I've just related is written out, showing how these 4 pairs were called out of the primordial waters of Nun by the keeper of the word itself, the one they call Chehuti, known today as thought in the Greek vernacular. So you see, it's important that we learn how things have been taken from the great-grandfathers and grandmothers of the earth, shifted around by the younger children on the planet, because as you all know, those of you who are parents, a lot of your children think they're smarter than you because they've been to college and they got little pieces of paper saying that they have ingested what their teachers and professors have given them, and they vomited it right back out, and they're now declared intelligent. Whereas the great-grandmother and grandfather fed your now educated butts, right? They were the ones who grew you up. They were the ones who know how to go in the backyard and get that certain herb to cure you of your colic or your fever without ever having entered into a school because they were learned from the book of nature. But it's very curious how the youngsters always think they are smarter than their elders. It happened in our religious world, my beloved sisters and brothers. You have Abraham and Sarah and Moses, and they are related to now be smarter than those who rescued them and saved their lives in the Nile Valley. And then you have now our beloved brothers and sisters in Christianity, and I say beloved because I love my brothers and sisters in all their faiths, but some of them have become very presumptuous. They think that they're smarter than Moses was. And then finally, you have our beloved Prophet Muhammad and our Muslim brothers and sisters, and they thought that they're smarter than the other two that came before them. Meanwhile, they are totally discounting the great-grandmother, grandfather who rescued and taught all of their major prophets, and whose wise Solomon even married one of the daughters of the Nile. And don't think that Solomon could be wise without having imbibed from the wisdom of Ma'at, from the very woman that he married from this Ma'atian nation of Smai-Rawi. He was married to a princess of the Nile. Okay, so I am saying these things because a lot of us have to study a little deeper and begin to put things together. And those who have an interest may one day ask us to relate your version, how you see things. And that's what you've invited me to do, my beloved brother, Priest Isaac, that I'm trying my best to convey. And I know it's a lot to take in one sitting, but you asked me, so here I am.
Yes, and you could almost call this just a overview of everything. But I'm not going to keep you, of course, too long. Of course, I'm going to respect your time. As you can see, I'm just going through some pictures here.
Yes.
Hoping that it's not even distracting you in your presentation, but just to give a little light to what you're saying, even to the family. But before we even seal up tonight, and we're still talking about the unification, and we're talking of knowledge and going into the future, I know that you are familiar with Rastafari as a movement, as a culture, as a concept, because you know for sure Rastafari would have, I would say, carried a lot of the responsibility of consciousness coming into this modern time. And that's the truth. When it comes to just holding up the name of Ethiopia, even up to a day like today, keeping up the name of Marcus Garvey, because even where you are, Marcus Garvey is not even a big thing. People that would have been born out of Marcus Garvey, and I would speak even of organization. Even I don't want to bring down nobody, and I'm not bringing down anyone. But you know, you have organization even like the Nation of Islam, and they would clearly tell you Marcus Garvey is their father. For those who would have started that, would have been on the fringes of Marcus Garvey, all who are affiliated with it, all the heroes of it had some connection to Marcus Garvey, but yet still Marcus Garvey is not on any picture on any wall. So again, it's not to pull anyone out, but to show how Rastafari would have kept the name of Marcus Garvey, Haile Selassie. It is only in this modern day, you know, I start to hear conscious people start to mention Haile Selassie and his importance, the Battle of Adwa, Menelik II, and yet still Rastafari now as a culture, you know, the vegetarian eating, you know, we have been beaten and killed for the ganja, which is now the world's most sacred plant, to the person with the stethoscope and the white coat. Imagine that. And at the same time now, as Rastafari again, we have a theology that is also, I would consider, evolving. Because a lot of what you're talking about here, when I came into this, I mean, a lot of the elders didn't even want to hear that. Some are still that ignorant, I must say, but the evolution is on. That is why myself and yourself, we're sitting down here and having a conversation of our anciency, Smai-Tawi.
I thought precisely.
Yes. So as Rastafari, or in any angle you want to take it, Rastafari as a conscious community in general, how is it that we start to merge this unity? Or are we doing it already? Because to me, we sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we are doing, you know. We want to do something, but we are actually doing it already. So, but from your perspective, how would you blend it all together?
Well, I was blessed to have, I was blessed, I should say, to have met my beloved brother from the country known as Yad in Jamaica. And he came, I went down to visit him in Jamaica, in
That's
Kingston,
beautiful.
Jamaica. Muta Baruka. Oh, yes, indeed. A powerful poet, a powerful statesman of the Rasta community. I walked into his compound and I'm surrounded on all four sides by Ankhs and the eyes of Heru. I said to him, but Muta, how you get away with this, boy? How you are able to have all these Ankhs around your compound and all of these eyes of Horus, as they would call them, eyes of Heru? He said, well, I have been studying. And this is part of the reason why I invited you to come here. And to tell you the truth, there was here in New York City, there's a place called Flatbush where the Rastafarian community set up house, basically. And one of the first brothers, a Rasta brother from Trinidad, who was a dear friend of mine, his name is Brother Jacob. Brother Jacob came and sat down, and I told him about the Ankh. And he was the first Rasta to wear the Ankh in Flatbush area of Brooklyn. And he suffered because fellow Rastas looked down and said, you Egyptian, with a sneer. Well, later on, I went and I visited Jamaica, and I went up to the compound of our beloved brother, Mutabaruka, and I went on his cutting edge program. At the time, I was with my then wife, Queen Afua, and we spent 3.5 hours on the cutting edge, a program that he hosted. And we went there, both Queen and I, we had our fathers were Garveyites. My father joined the Garvey movement in La República Dominicana, or what they call the Dominican Republic, in the city of Macorís. And he used to travel every Saturday for 5 years to visit my beloved mother, which he later married, Amancia Alberta de Guerrero. Her name Guerrero means warrior, so I was born from a warrior woman whose very name carried that principle. But my father was a Garveyite, so Queen and I went down there to do a pilgrimage around Marcus Garvey's house around St. Anne's Bay. And then after we came off the radio station with Mutabaruka, and I took my guitar with me and I played some Hesse music and for him. And it was a wonderful time we had together. And then a couple of years later, I got a call from Mutabaruka's representative here in New York City. Muta is at the airport coming to visit you. Well, Muta walked into my studio barefoot in the winter. And he said, I come to do 2 half-hour television programs with you so you can explain yourself. So he came up and we did those tapes. And you will find them on YouTube, okay, where I'm explaining about the meaning of the animals that they accuse us of worshiping in the Nile Valley. And he was one of the first of the Rasta community who was highly respected had the nerve to confront the learned ignorance of some of the elders at the time who were not ready to venture out of the Old Testament, even though the one who brought them the Old Testament was educated by the people that they were taught to despise, the so-called Egyptians. Okay. And so as a result of that effort, many brothers and sisters who are in the Rasta community now has evolved to claim the Ankh. Because make no mistake about it, let's never forget the land of Cush was born out of the seed of Chem. Notice I said Chem, not Ham, because King James did not pronounce the name correctly, because in Hebrew it's Chum, Chum, like from the back of the throat, Chum, not Ham, not it's Chum, okay? And Chum, according to the Old Testament, gave birth to who? To Cush, which is Ethiopia. Gave birth to Misraim. Misraim, when you break it down in the Metuneter, Mes means to be born. Ra, of the sun. Ain means to come forth. Oh, yeah. Even in Hebrew, you can hear the sounds of the Metuneter. Misraim means the one who's born of Ra, who comes from the sun. Oh, yes. So the very name Misraim, though it's Hebrew, is the name of the place now referred to as Egypt. Then you have Put, or I would prefer to say Ptah. That's other son of Ham. Some say that he inherited the land now called Libya. I would tend to disagree, because the Ptahites, the Put or Ptah, could be traced to the forests down in Monomotapa in the South African region, where you had the first smelters of iron, because there were craftspeople who made their weapons of iron. And that is the domain of Ptah. Metals of the earth, rocks and stones, is the domain of Ptah. You see? So now, another son of Ham was called Canaan. That's the one that said he was cursed, because they said he saw the nakedness of his father. No, that Canaan was cursed by his grandfather. Why was Canaan born? They just came out of the ark. Noah planted a vineyard and was drunken in his tent. And they said, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brethren without, and they took a sheet and laid it at both their shoulders, and their faces were turned, and they did not see the nakedness of Noah. Nakedness? What does nakedness mean allegorically? It means revelation. So one son saw the complete revelation of his father's wisdom and his father's faults. The other two pretended not to see anything. Their faces were turned. So now they did not inherit the wisdom of their father. Only one son inherited that wisdom, because he looked at the complete revelation of his father Noah. So he got his wisdom, and he also saw his faults. So he was able to self-correct very early on. Okay? But most do not interpret the story that way. They say, oh, nakedness means he was ashamed. Well, if these are first times and first people, who is wearing clothes? Maybe they may have a piece of bush on to protect their groin area, but there's no shame in being naked. Who's ashamed of their bodies? Only those who are challenged by the rays of Ra. Okay?
He says, Curse be Canaan, the son of Ham, servant of servants he shall be.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, cursed be Canaan. That you see, you all well know that if you borrow some money from someone and you don't want to pay them back, pick a fight with them and then you'll have to pay them back.
I know that.
So if you want to take his land, you have to make him an outlaw in order to justify doing what you do to him by taking his land from him.
It's more than interpretation, it's additives, man, and subtractions. Yes, of course.
Okay, yes.
Of
I know
course.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, definitely.
But
Also, just quickly, you made you mentioned a program you did with the good brother 19 Keys. And yeah, it was a good interview, quite lengthy. I must say I didn't take it all, but in the future. But you made mention of what's his name there? Graham Hancock. You just made mention in passing. I'm interested to know what about him that you made that remark about. You were just somewhat skeptical of him or critical. I think
yeah,
critical
well,
the
well,
case.
he said that in conversations with some of the elders of the lands to the south in South Africa, that they were related to that there's some white men came.
Okay, right. Okay,
White men came too. So I
yeah.
said, well, maybe they were truly white because
Yeah,
they painted their skins, their dark skins, with white
with
paint.
white hair. Yes.
Because there's no such thing on earth as a white individual.
Because that yes, now it's coming to me because even in the Western world, they speak about the white man in the Olmec tradition, that there's this white man that is coming, and one's considered that when Cortez and these fellas came along, somehow the main Olmec people were fooled because they thought that they were the white people that the prophecy spoke about, which I really find that when it comes to the Aztec Mayan history, Inca history, a lot of falsification is given to the interpretation too, just like our history. And yeah.
Precisely. You see, Africans have always worn white paint when they go into the spirit for what you call for their rituals.
Yes,
I
Yoruba.
explained the reason. Yeah, they put clay pipe, right, on their faces and marks on their arms and on their bellies. They have this white paint. Why? Because they're entering into the spirit a world and they want to be recognized as beings of light. Okay.
Yes.
So the roseoderm, or those with pink color skin, are not white people. They have appropriated that term because of how it's described in their dictionaries as being pure
Purity, yes.
and all of those nice sounding adjectives, while the word black is given such pejorative and such terrible definitions. Why we would want to claim something that has been so bespotted, I don't know. Why would we do this? When the fact is we are more brown. And I always tell people the word black has the word lack in it, but the word brown has the word own in it. Okay. Now, there is such a thing as what we call it kemur. Kem means dark in the Metuneter. Or if you insist on using the word black, go ahead. I just don't like the sound of it because it sounds like a gunshot to me. Black. Okay. However, it does not mean that I would shy away from the kiss of the sun that gives us this color that we now call black in English. I'm not an Englishman. So if I cannot find a word in the African language to call and describe myself, something is wrong with me. That's why I'm pushing this concept of linguistic sovereignty. Yes, we're speaking English now. Okay. However, when we discover the ancient words of our ancestors, and much of it has been interpreted, there's no reason why we shouldn't reclaim some of those sounds and put them into the ethers. When you were on the plantation calling on the name of the one that your slave master gave you, did he ever come? Huh? Did he ever come to save you? No. Your slave master was calling on that same name, that German name, to his advantage because it was his sound. And then he put it in your head. And you're calling on that same sound and you're getting beaten every day and night. And your women are being raped. And you're still calling on that name. And you have not made it your business to untie the knot and the chains put on your brain, that you've been brain stained. You have not made the effort to find out where is a word in the ancient language of my ancestors that I could use to call this power that resides within and in the cosmos. Well, your ancestors call it in Ghana, Jinyame, okay? And there's so many other names. used by Africans throughout that continent to invoke the name of divine. So why, and I use the word divine because it's gender neutral, okay? It's a power, it's a force, it's a spirit of creation that rules and governs all things. So when I invoke one of its many names, I'm going to be sure that I'm faithful to my ancestors, that I honor my mother and my father, that my days may be long on the earth, and begin to use their language to invoke power. Yes. And that's what we are charged to do, not to parrot the things that have been handed to us by people who envied us and who enslaved us and raped our women and molested our children. Okay? Now, people will say, brother, you're talking hate. I hate no one. I do not. I speak truth. I speak truth that can be proven. Mm-hmm. The evidence is there. I don't have to make anything up. I don't have to lie. Because it's one of the 42 covenants of Ma'at. I will not lie. I will not be unjust. I will not desecrate holy places. This body temple is a holy place. I'm not desecrating it by putting all the junk inside of it. A lot of chemicals that are now being, they're taking away the ganja from the Rasta and they took off the seeds. When you see a people creating fruit without seeds, you know that something is wrong. You're eating denatured foods. You're being blanked out. You're being neutralized because seeds are an inconvenience. Don't just spit them out, plant them. But look, you're eating all that sugar, but it's got no nourishment. When you take the mango off the tree and the seed is inside it, that seed is still feeding the fruit. Mm. When there's no seed, you're eating a neutered fruit, and it's having an impact upon your consciousness because the very ground out of which it's growing now is chemical fertilizers. And in that chemical fertilizers, there are many chemicals that are made to mess with your DNA. Mm-hmm.
Even if it's...
You find that your wrist starting getting a little limp, huh? Know what I'm talking about, Because of the estrogen they put in the fertilizer. So, brother man, you're supposed to be strong, and all of a sudden you're getting soft now.
Okay. I just get what you're saying, there is a little limp, yeah. A long time.
Because of the food.
Yes, I get you.
Go together with the agenda to keep the population of certain people on this earth down.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my brother. Yes, my good brother. There's so many things, I have to put this one even before we go again. Although I wouldn't say I'm Meduneter literate. I may know one or two signs, but observing the pyramid texts of Pepe, I would notice on the walls there you have beautiful renditions of crosses. A very simple question is, as you are the master of the Ankh and the father of such, is the Ankh really the predecessor to the cross, or is the cross a unique symbol by itself? I'm not talking about the corrupted cross, because even in the heavens, you have the Southern Cross, which is one of the more outstanding constellations. So I'm actually asking this question for myself. Is the Ankh the original cross, as we like to say, which it sounds almost correct. But then in my observation, we have been utilizing that symbol, the cross. So is the cross unique to itself in ancient terms, or was it transformed, modified from the Ankh? My question.
It was modified from the Ankh, and the cross existed from the first times.
I get that.
The cross is a symbol, the equilateral cross. And you would find it immortalized in Lalibela, in the church of Georgis, which is the temple of the Church of St. George. Okay, in Lalibela. The roof of that is equilateral cross, where all the sides are equal, because you're dealing with an equatorial symbol of equal days and equal nights. The modern one that was created by Rome, you have long nights and short days. And long nights of ignorance and short days of awareness. However, some say that it represents the boy and the man. Okay, the long staff at the bottom and the little staff on the top.
Oh my.
Okay.
That's really Greek, eh?
That's more of the northern rendition of what was the perfect cross, equilateral cross. Okay. Now the Ankh. Anyone can see. You don't have to go to school and get courses in divinity. It's a word for life because it's the womb of the woman. It is her fallopian tubes. It's her birth canal. It's the prostate of the man. It is testicles. It's his organ of regeneration. So the Ankh itself is a sign of life in both hemispheres of masculine and feminine principles. Life. And that's why people say, what's your religion? I hold this up. I said, life. Because if life is your religion, and I should say that life, the Ankh is my spiritual path because I honor the life that I've been given. And I honor my brothers and sisters' lives, okay? Because it comes through the divine seed of my father and the womb and the egg of my mother. So this envelops both principles because life is androgynous. What's wrong with that? It's gynandrous. It's androgynous and gynandrous. Everything is twin on this earth. You have electricity and you have magnetism. The female principle is magnetic. The masculine principle is electrical. When these two come together, look out. What? Life blossoms.
Electromagnetic energy.
Look, the Ankh is not spelled with an A, you know. It's spelled with a wave of water and a sieve. Okay, the wave of water is and the sieve is okay, and that creates this word for life eternal. The very name for divine is netter or nature. Okay, the very consonants of the word nature. Okay, and so both the name of life begins with a wave of water and the name for the divine begins with a wave of water, begins with, and then a loaf, and then the lips of utterance of the word. That is how it's spelt in the glyphs. One day I'll come on and draw these things on a chalkboard to demonstrate what these symbols mean. And by the way, tell all your friends and family members that I can render their names in the ancient language of the Metu Neter. Metu means words, Neter means divine. Or if you insist, the word God. Okay, the ancients of the Nile said that their language was the very word of the divine. Okay, so why should we not claim that language? I don't say we should throw away what we've been initiated into in Arabic or in the Hebrew language. No, languages are magical, and we should study as many of them as we can. However, we should never deny the great-grandmother, grandfather system of articulation, which is left for us in stone and on papyrus. With that say, I'm going to end this conversation, my beloved, if you will allow me to, brother, because you invited me, so I must ask your permission to depart. And I will depart with this short prayer in the ancient Metu Neter. Amasuen pa Sauk su emendra pa au tua maketipa Heru. Give yourself to the divine, keep yourself daily for the divine, and do it tomorrow, just as you do it today. Ankh and Ma'at, live in truth. Hetepu, peace offerings to all of you, my beloved brothers and sisters.
Peace, my brother. Shalom. Give thanks. And Hotep. Give thanks. That was a wonderful sit down there with the good brother Heru, Brother Heru Samaj. We give thanks and Isis for such a reasonment and such a sit down. And as the good brother already promised that he will return to give us a bit more of his scholarship. I think that program a moment ago, well, I obviously was just humbled. I think you could obviously see that. All the, you couldn't even nearly see the excitement, but it was well muzzled down. But I was very excited to have the elder there. As the elder said, I would have come across him, I would have known of him, but I would have met him in flesh. I'm talking about at least maybe 14 years ago in Tortola. And many of you would have seen that video, Fairy Tale Folly Days and Nursery Crimes. I know a lot of you who have been following for a while would have come across I and I for the first time watching that lecture there. That lecture was done in Tortola. That was the very same time I would have met the good brother Heru, Baaba Heru, pardon me. And as you would have heard him say, we finally come again and meet again around another table. So I'm very thankful, and I'm really looking forward to the second opportunity I have to do a program with him, and more opportunities that are definitely to come. Again, I'm very humbled and I'm very thankful for the teaching moments, and we must show appreciation to our elders and give thanks for the love that he would have shared with us. So family, give thanks. Of course, I would bid you a blessed evening and or whatever time it is where you are. And of course, I would just leave you with love and happiness and joy and righteousness. And again, give thanks for our visitor, Brother Heru, Baaba Heru. Give thanks. Holy Emmanuel I, Selassie I, Jah, Rastafari, blessed love.